DIYers, what's going on? Mike Boards with the Mike Boards channel. Thank you for watching. Hey, we're talking jet skis today, and in today's video we are going to show you how to properly and safely replace the entire start stop push button switch and wire harness that feeds downstream. Not just the cap, but the entire wire harness kit. Let's get started. DIYers, here we are at the workstation, and my mom and dad's 2003 Sea-Doo GTX in-house for the winter for DIY repair videos. And again, in today's video, we are going to replace the start-stop push button on the back side of the start-stop cap and the wiring that feeds all the way into your handlebar system and downstream. Fun project ahead. Let's get started. What we'll do first is remove the seats. Coming to the back, and I've mentioned this in several videos, this is our rear latch for our aft or rear seat. And notice how easy that is to maneuver. It's not screeching, scratching, it's not stiff. We have properly lubricated this. And DIYers, scrolling above right now is a link on how to properly lubricate your latches, because unfortunately if you don't do that, well, over time they're going to break and you don't want that. But if you do experience that, we got you covered. Down below in the comments section as well as the description section is a link on how to replace one of these latches. Again, we'll remove our seats. Taking a step back, and there it is with the seats removed. How cool is that? And the seats are on the floor as shown here. DIYers, what I recommend doing next, safety first always. Cut all electrical power to your system. In our case, our battery is fully removed for the winter. However, in your case, battery is probably still installed. So what you want to do is disconnect the black negative cable from your battery, again, cutting all electrical power to the system as you work through the project. Alright DIYers, a quick reposition of the camera, and now that you have completely cut all electrical power to the system, it is safe to move forward. And the way you're looking at it right now, you are facing the front portion of the jet ski, and here's our handlebar unit and our throttle lever on the far right, and in the center is our ignition probe. And on the far left hand side is a cap where you see our start stop push button, and we've got two additional buttons, a mode button and a set button. We need to remove this plastic cap. And in our case, on the very bottom here is one Phillips screw. And do your best not to damage the Phillips screw as you loosen this up. It should be very friendly to remove, because whoever serviced this last hopefully knew not to over tighten it, because if you over tighten it, this is plastic and it will break, and that's not what you want. Go ahead and set the screw in a safe location where it's not going to get lost. After you remove that screw, come to the very bottom. I like to come on this side here and carefully push down on this section and push down on the top, and as I do that, simultaneously pull outward on this part here. And here's the back side, just to give you a heads up. You've got a little hook or tab, and that will lock in place up here, and you've got side tabs right here that lock in place on the sides. Be very careful as you remove this. You do not want it to break. Do your absolute best to refrain from using a screwdriver to pry that off. That would not be smart. And here it is, the push button right here. Unfortunately, ours is pretty weak and no longer makes that brand new spring-loaded feel or operation to it. And I'm going to carefully pull this out of its slot here. And there it is. Again, that's a little push button that the back side of the start-stop push button makes contact with right there. And when you push on it, again, it pushes that in and sends the electrical signal downstream to start your engine, as well as stop it when it's time to end the fun. So again, at this point, we need to come down here, and we've got multiple 7/32 screws that secure this bottom panel to our entire handlebar unit. And if I counted them correctly, we have 6 total, and again, 7/32. There it is. You also have a washer. Do not lose these. And the way I'm going to organize these screws is I'm going to set them in the pattern that they went inside this panel. I want the same screws going in the same holes. Now to the additional 5. To the starboard side. Here we are back port side. The lower panel is loose. However, we still can't remove it. What we need to do is come to the back side of each of these plastic housings and remove the small little Allen screw. And at that point, it will allow us to carefully shift this housing ever so slightly outward so we can remove this panel without damaging the plastic tabs. And using my 1/4 inch ratchet, I've got a T15 Again, come to the back side, and we are going to carefully loosen and remove this little Allen screw. There it is. Do not drop that. Next, here we are starboard side. We're going to do the same thing. On the back portion of this housing, we are going to carefully loosen and remove that Allen screw. Making progress. I've loosened, and I'm not going to remove this Allen screw. I'm just going to loosen it to a point where I can gain a little extra play when carefully removing this panel. Back port side, and from here, just carefully, I'll shift this out just a little bit, and I'll begin slowly removing this lower panel. There we go. Pull it out just a little toward me and lower it out. And by moving your handlebar unit, it might be a little easier. However, inside here you have plastic tabs. Do not damage them when you are removing that panel. Back to starboard side, just to give me a little extra push to remove this panel. There we go. There's the back side of the panel. I'll set that in a safe location. And here it is. We have much better access to the internal wiring. Again, here's your ignition probe that feeds through here. And if I just move our little push button up here, you can see which wire and cable we need to direct our attention to. Check that out. And again, it feeds all the way through the center bottom portion of our handlebar unit and downstream. Now to a close-up of the internal portion of that little plastic housing. And again, there is no sound with the click. Listen. No sound whatsoever. Weak, old, needs to be replaced. And from here, we will carefully shift this little latch up. Again, no screeching, no screaming. It's not stiff. We properly lubricated that. Here's what the backside looks like. Again, down below is a link to a video on how to replace a latch like that. And here is the inner portion of our handlebar unit. That electrical wiring feeds all the way through here and through this little boot and inside our hull. However, as you can see here, we've got our fire extinguisher and we've got an access panel that is held in place by several plastic lock clips. We need to carefully remove those. Back to the workbench where I placed that lower plastic panel we just removed. To the left of that, here is the tool that you will use to properly remove those plastic lock clips without breaking them. Those break pretty easy if you don't have the right tool. And down below in the comment section as well as the description section will be a link on where to purchase that tool. Back port side of the jet ski, coming inside the front storage compartment where again we have several of those lock clips. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to position the camera in a way where I can show you. Here's how I'm going to insert this tool on the clip. Come in at an angle and carefully, as you slide this onto the tab, you can carefully remove it. And at this point, without damaging it, I'm going to come in here and grab it by hand and remove it. Check that out. And to the right of that, the second clip, again, come in at an angle to a point where you can pull that clip out and again, remove it by hand, as shown here. Now to the third clip. And continue all the way around until you remove 100% of those locking clips. And DIYers, if you have never removed this panel inside your front storage compartment, chances are the adhesive is still very strong. So carefully peel this panel away from the internal mount and you can carefully separate it. And I've got the second half of all of those plastic lock clips still installed in the panel, and that's okay with me. I'm going to carefully lower this panel and remove it fully. There it is. I will set that ever so carefully down as shown there. And coming back inside the hull to the dirty side or section of our hull. Check that out. On the right hand side you can see our big gas tank, and just above it on the left hand side you can see a small oil tank. And on top of our gas tank is our fuel filter assembly. However, we are going to direct our attention up here to this electrical connection point, and it is held in place with a tie strap. Look at that. I'll go ahead and cut that tie strap. Making progress. I went ahead and snipped that. Let's go ahead and remove that zip tie. Coming outside of the storage compartment, back up to the wiring, and a very important step. You really need to take a good view of the electrical wiring. In our case, we have a yellow with a red stripe, and we have a solid black. And the mode and set have a yellow, and there is no stripe on that. We've got purple and green. And when it comes to our ignition, we have coming to up here, we've got white, we've got black with a purple stripe, and we've got black with a yellow stripe on it. So again, we are going to be looking for an all black and a yellow with a white stripe. Coming back down below, you can see right in here that if you went to the right hand or top connections and wires, you've got purple, green, yellow. That's got a blue stripe on it. That's not ours. Let me swap it to the opposite end. And then you've got a black with purple, and that's not what we want. In addition, there's the yellow with the red stripe. That is one of our wires, and it feeds into that point right there. Try not to tug on these as you're looking for them. And this yellow wire here with the red stripe feeds right here. So the lower switch or electrical connection is what we need to direct our attention to. And to remove these connection points, you have this little tension tab, and on the opposite end it has a lock. And when you push down on that little tab, it unlocks the opposite end, and then you can carefully separate the two plastic connections. Do not pull from the wiring, that would not be good. And do not damage any portion of the bottom wiring, that would also not be good. DIYers, this is not easy. I'm at a very awkward position, and once you shift this out to a point where that tension tab or lock tab no longer spring loads to the outward or lock position, you know you're making progress. Just be patient. You may need to go to starboard side, get a better angle. There we go. And you've got a little rubber seal here that keeps any and all moisture or anything else inside this hull from getting inside and corroding those electrical leads. Now to a closer view of the connection, and we are going to direct our attention to this connector here. And this is what's called a DT series connection point. And in our case, we have 6 prongs or 6 wires feeding into the connector. And the DT series connector comes in 2, comes in 3, 4, and so on. However, in our case, again, we have 6. And the darker orange is that rubber seal that again creates a watertight seal in here to prevent any moisture getting inside the connection points and corroding them. And then on the very top is a plastic cap or plug. And if you look ever so carefully right there, you can see a small little slot where you put the tool in our case, a very fine tip flathead screwdriver. We are going to insert in one of those slots and ever so carefully shift the plug up and off and remove this plug. With the camera reposition, I grab my Craftsman fine tip flathead screwdriver. And again, as always, I'm going to do my best to give you a good view of this. I will grab the electrical connection, and again, the lighter orange is the top plastic plug and the darker orange is your rubber seal. As you remove this plug, do your absolute best not to damage that seal. That would not be good. Come in at an angle inside one of these slots, and as you do this, try not to drop that plug. Go very slow. There's no need to rush this. And once you sink the flathead screwdriver between the plug and the top portion of the gray connection, you can then ever so carefully pry it off like that. And position your hands and fingers in a way where you are not going to drop this plug down inside your hull where you won't be able to find it. There it is. And as far as the plug, there's a view of the internal portion. Again, we've got a DT Series 6 prong plug. Check that out. To the workbench, and there it is again. The internal plug. In our case, our DT series connection has 6 connections or electrical leads. Here we are port side of the jet ski, and in reference to the little push button here and wiring, we are going to come underneath, and as I move this back and forth, again you can see the wiring is right on top, and I've got a zip tie here. I will carefully cut that with my little cutters and pull that out. And from here, again, these are the 2 wires that feed downstream. Taking a step back, the tie strap has been cut and removed as you just saw. And in relation to the start-stop switch assembly, the wiring, if I move it like this, you can see the wiring on the inner portion here, and a solid black line and a yellow line with a red stripe matches right here. And coming here, you might actually have this connection point. This is what's called a bullet connection, and this top coating here creates a watertight seal to alleviate any moisture getting inside the connection and corroding it. That would not be good. And this entire top portion here is not waterproof, so if you don't have the jet ski covered and it rains, well, unfortunately, water can sneak through here, make its way in between the top panel and lower panel we removed, and then make contact with the wiring, where it will end up damaging or corroding the inner wiring connections. So again, that is why this is designed the way it is, and what we need to do is disconnect this little bullet connection right here for the black wire, and the yellow wire with the red stripe continues downstream into that connection point down below. At this point, I've got the camera positioned in a way, again, I'm doing my absolute best to give you the best camera angles, the best views, and the best lighting during this project. And with that said, I'm going to show you how to disconnect that little bullet connection. And what you want to do first, without damaging any wiring, you're going to carefully shift this little protector down toward the inner portion here and away from the top switch. And again, I'm doing my absolute best to not get in your way. And I'm just going to carefully shift the coating down the wiring. And it's possible that as you do this, you may disconnect the fitting, which is okay, that's your ultimate goal. However, when pulling this fitting and connection point apart, don't grab the wires, grab the actual bullet fitting here to get a better grip. And again, as you see, now I'm exposed. And the way this works is this little internal piece right here is hard connected to the inner wire. And this little bullet is crimped to this wire right here that feeds upstream. And again, you will carefully, without damaging anything, grab here and separate them. Just like that. And that is what it looks like. I'll give you a closer view. To a closer view as promised. Again, there is the bullet connection that feeds inside that little hole right there. And you can see the crimped wire on the opposite end. And not sure if you can make out anything inside here, but on the back side, again, it splits in two. One black wire goes up to the desk key, and the additional black wire, which we will not remove in this project, that is going to stay connected to the fitting that connects inside here and joins the two black wires. Again, one that feeds downstream to that DT connection point, and this one on the right hand side that feeds up to your desk. We are going to leave those as is. However, the yellow wire with the red stripe that feeds inside here and through this portion and all the way down inside here, we are going to remove. However, from here, coming up top, and if you just ever so carefully push the housing outward, you can actually move this through that little gap there. And as you see here, it is completely loose. And again, there's that little bullet fitting. And from here, let's go down inside the storage compartment and remove the yellow wire with the red stripe. Coming back inside the storage compartment and to the DT series connection point, and a quick view of the internal portion here. And I'm going to go to the back side again. The wire that we need to remove is the yellow wire with the red stripe, and I'll give you a better view of it. And I want you to take a look at the side. You can see a 1, a 2, and a 3 on the far right side of the gray connection, and on the opposite side is 4, 5, and 6. And in our case, number 6 is our wire, again, yellow wire with the red stripe. And inside here are 6 little tabs, as you see inside there. And what we need to do is ever so carefully insert a flathead screwdriver and push down on that little tension tab for our specific number 6 wire. And again, it is the upper left, and it will be that one right there. I got the camera set back, and again, our yellow and red striped wire feeds into number 6, and that is that one right there. And I'm also going to remove the little rubber seal. I don't want that being damaged as I work through this project. Next, back to my very fine tip Craftsman flathead screwdriver. I am now in position again. this one right here. And I've got a good hold of the connection point, and I'm going to insert the flathead screwdriver. And these little plastic tension tabs, you want to carefully get to the inner portion in between the tab and the connection, and ever so carefully shift it to the middle. And once you do that, you can basically free up the connection. Check that out. And I can't move those, and I can even push it slightly back. Now to this tool right here. There's the part number. I'm going to push that connection out of the fitting. Go inside the middle of it. And as I carefully push this out, you will see it pop out the opposite end. And from here, I should just be able to grab it by hand and pull it out of the rubber insert, as shown here. There it is. In addition, once you pull this out, take a good look at the actual rear rubber fitting to ensure it is not popping out the bottom or opposite end of the connection point. And you want to make sure no additional wires came loose as you removed the one that we needed to remove. Now to a close-up, DIYers, check that out. Again, number 6 on the back side is the yellow wire with the red stripe. That is what the connection point looks like that feeds inside the back rubber fitting that is numbered 6 and locks in place with the internal plastic tension tabs. And again, we are now free. Coming out of the storage compartment back to starboard side into the yellow wire with the red stripe, and if I pull this, the yellow wire with the red stripe should move. As it does. Check that out. And it's pretty tight. And vice versa. If I pull this wire, that should move. Perfect. We have the right wires. Again, our black wire going into the bullet fitting and the yellow wire with the red stripe down into the DT connection point. Back to the workbench. Again, I'm just using a very fine tip Craftsman flathead screwdriver. There's the plug, there's the rubber fitting, and that tool right there is what we just used to push out the actual plug. As you see here, I just basically put it inside the center hole and pushed it out to a point where I could grab it by hand on the other side and remove it fully. And then the top one here is our install tool. We will get to that here shortly. With the camera repositioned, I'm going to maneuver the wires to give me access to the internal portion of that wrap where all the wires feed into, and I've grabbed some string trimmer line. I'm going to feed it inside there and all the way downstream. And if it gets stuck, don't force it. Just pull it back out just a little bit and try reinserting it again. And if I come down below and grab the string, I should be able to pull it through. Check that out. Perfect. And back inside the storage compartment, and there it is, feeding out of the entire wrapping that houses the electrical wires. And DIYers, in the event that you are having trouble feeding your string trimmer line down, well, start from this side. And you can see some pretty aggressive bends as it makes its way up. So if it gets caught up from the top in this section, go ahead and insert it at the bottom and carefully feed it upstream. Coming out of the storage compartment, taking a step back to starboard side, and DIYers, in the event that you are curious or you're wondering why I am using string trimmer line to feed the new wiring through, as opposed to snipping the yellow wire with the red stripe and connecting the new wire to it and pulling it downstream, well, this is just how I'm doing it. You have the option, it will be personal preference, to again snip the yellow wire or whatever color your wire is and tape the new wire of the switch to the old wire and feed it through. And the black wire does not have to be fed through because, again, it will come as a bullet connection here. And that's as far as it goes. It never actually makes its way in here and downstream. So again, personal preference on how you do this step. Very next thing is we are going to carefully pull that entire wire harness out of this entire handlebar section and downstream. And if you choose to do it this way, just be careful. No need to pull hard. And again, this little bullet connection and the black wire are already disconnected and out. And I'm just going to carefully pull. And if it's bound up, go back down inside the storage compartment and free the opposite connection of the wire from anything it's getting caught on. And again, just be patient. Do not pull hard. In addition, as I'm pulling this yellow wire with the red stripe, I'm also going to hold this section of the wire harness and wrap, just so I alleviate any harm or damage to the additional wiring. There it is. Check that out. There's the entire wire harness and switch. Check that out. Here we are at the backup workbench. On the right hand side you can see the switch kit and wire harness, and on the left hand side you can see a package of DT series connection points and a couple tools. It's a tight fit inside that storage compartment, so unfortunately I did get in your way. I'm going to show you a better view of how these come disconnected and reconnected. Camera now positioned, and again, here is the DT series. This is a little bit larger than the one we just worked on inside the storage compartment. And again, with your flathead screwdriver, you got these two little slots here. Carefully insert it, pop up the cap, and remove it. Set that aside. And again, inside here is the part where I got in your way, and the little connection points slide in through the rubber coating here. As you see, it is rubber. This entire orange piece is not plastic. And coming inside here, I'll give you a good view of one of the tabs. Again, just by shifting it to the center portion, you can see it widens the hole and allows the connection point to be unlocked or freed up so you can pull it out the opposite end. See that? See those little tabs? I just wanted to show you a better view of that. And on the back side, right here, you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, this part is rubber, and we are just shy of installing the brand new wiring. And here is the old wiring and connection point. And I want to show you a close-up view of this tool right here. There's the part number, and you can see the design of it. And the way I'm going to do this is carefully rest the wire inside the little cutout there and slide it all the way up flush to the bottom portion of the fitting. And at that point, you basically pinch it inside the little slot in the tool, and you can carefully push it in without damaging the wire or connection into the DT series connection point. And what we'll do is we'll just slide it in number 1, which is right there. And we will do this exactly the same inside the storage compartment. Carefully push it inside that hole until you are through, and come to the opposite end. And as you see, I still have a little bit more to go. And the tool itself will go inside that orange rubber fitting or seal, as shown here. And again, you're just pushing it all the way through, and it's almost there. You'll continue pushing it basically until it's flush with the top portion here, and that internal plastic tab locks the connection point in place. Did you hear it click? From here, you just carefully pull the tool out. And again, we are going to do this the exact same way I just showed you once we get back to the jet ski. And it is completely flush and locked in place. And again, to disconnect it, all I have to do is come inside here to that internal tab, push it to the center, and use the opposite tool, which is this one right here, to push it out. And if all looks good, you will carefully reinsert the cap, verify that your orange rubber seal is perfectly positioned, and you'll reconnect everything. Time to go back to the jet ski and install the brand new wire kit. Back to the primary workbench. I've got some orange electrical tape, I've got a pair of scissors, and I'm going to open up our brand new switch and wiring, as you see here. And I'm going to carefully tape the brand new wire to that string trimmer line and feed it downstream and into place. And you might actually not have a bullet point connection. You might have a start-stop switch, which is this part number here, that has 2 of the DT series connections and will actually feed all the way through the handlebar unit and in place in those connections. Again, different than mine because I've got that bullet point or connection, and it only feeds about 8 inches from the actual switch. Here's the brand new switch and wire harness out of the packaging, and before I start taping this and feeding it inside the jet ski, just verify that the connection points are the exact same size, exact same length, etc. as your old ones. Back port side of the jet ski, again our gray string trimmer line feeding into the orange electrical tape and our brand new wire harness, and I've got the brand new wire about 3 to 4 inches up on the string trimmer line. And I'm going to ever so carefully begin feeding it inside that protective wrap where the other wires go into and downstream. With the camera in position, DIYers, I can't stress enough, make sure you go slow, be patient, and before you start pulling this through, double check that your electrical tape is firmly wrapped, there's no loose ends. And I'm going to go inside the storage compartment and begin pulling it downstream. And as I do this, I'm going to use my right hand to help feed it inside that little protective wrap. And this is where it's going to be a little tough. Again, don't damage anything as you do this. And right now I'm starting to see the orange electrical tape on the opposite end coming out of the electrical wrap, which is good. And there it is. I'll wait to connect that. Coming back inside the storage compartment, as you can see, it is completely fed through the wrap. What I'll do is unwrap that orange electrical tape and pull the string trimmer line completely out. And I did just that. Electrical tape has been removed, and a quick inspection of the connection. All looks good. String trimmer line coming out. From here, DIYers, it's time to grab this tool right here, as I just showed you, and we are going to insert and secure that electrical wire and connection point inside the big gray plastic housing. I'm going to try not to get in your way and get that wire in position as shown here, and begin pushing it inside the connection point. Again, a very tough angle to give you a good view, as shown there. And it looks like we are in, but it needs to continue to be pushed through just a little bit. And do your best to position the tool as straight as you possibly can so you do not damage or harm or rip the rubber fitting on the back side of the connection. And I heard it click. I'll pull that out and check that out. We are in and secured. I'll give it a couple pulls, make sure it is secured, and it's that one right there in the top left corner. And that is on there, not moving. If all looks good, it is time to re-secure the center cap as shown here. And in the event that the electrical connection point came up and out the opposite end, this cap will actually help assist it in pushing it back into place where that internal plastic tab can lock the connection fitting in place. There we go. And from here, carefully re-secure it into the opposite end connection point and verify that your rubber seal is properly positioned. Push until you click and the fittings are locked together. Just like that, we'll go grab a zip tie and zip tie these connection points together as they were from the manufacturer. And go ahead and cut it. And that is it, DIYers. Make sure again you did not damage or harm anything as you work through this project. Make sure no wires came loose from any port of the DT series connection point here. And all looks good. And these wires actually run back to your MPEM in computer. Back port side, time to install the bullet connection inside the fitting, and you're probably wondering why we have a purple wire. Well, this is a superseded OEM part, and the new superseded part number came with a purple wire. And this is compatible for both the 2002 and 2003 GTX. So from here, I'm going to carefully align it here. I might even pull this ever so carefully out a little bit and feed this inside the connection and push it all the way in until it basically makes a clicking sound and you know it's locked in place. Just like that. I'll give you a close-up real quick. To a close-up, you got the bullet fitting inside the housing as shown there, and you've got this little weatherproof seal here. And what I'm going to do next is ever so carefully shift the green weather seal coating over and onto this weather seal and create that weatherproof seal. And here it is. Again, the green weatherproof seal has been shifted onto the brand new wire and weatherproof seal as shown here. Here we are sitting back on the seat. I'm going to carefully shift the wire harness through the top panel here and the housing and position it in place. As shown here, and feed it down and into its respective position. Now to a close-up view, DIYers, here is what I did next. I actually fed the wires in that little slot in between the housing that holds the mode and set and the top housing here. And that allowed the actual switch to rest perfectly in place in its little slot here. I'll come back down below. I will zip tie these two together as they were from the manufacturer. And there it is, zip tied in place. Do not over tighten that zip tie. What I'm going to do now is set the camera back on the seat. I'm going to move the handlebars back and forth to ensure that there's no interference or binding of the wires. That would not be good. With the camera position, again, I'm going to move the handlebars back and forth, and I want to make sure that the wires basically stay stationary and don't get bound up in any way. And as you can see, the wires are not moving while I shift the handlebars back and forth, and that's what you want. I'm satisfied with that. It is now time to re-secure both the panel right here and the panel inside the storage compartment. Coming inside the storage compartment, I'm going to do the exact same thing I just did up top. I'm going to move the handlebars back and forth and ensure that no wires down here are bound up or interfering with anything. All looks good. Time to secure that back panel. I might clean it up just a little bit. Back inside the storage compartment, and here are the little lock clips that are used to, again, re-secure that panel. And the way these work, as you can see, I can compress the inner portion here because, again, the pin is pulled out. Now, as I shift this pin in, I can no longer compress the inner portion, and that is what locks this fitting in place and secures the panel. And as always, just go slow, be precise, do not break anything. And DIYers, in the event that you did not break any of these little plastic lock clips during the removal process, that is awesome. Again, using the right tool goes a long way. I will position the fitting in place and push it flush. And once the panel is flush with the back panel, I will then slide that little pin in and lock it in place. Check that out. And for the top center hole, I took the inner lock pin out. Again, I just want to show you. Insert it, push it flush, grab the pin, align it properly. As you can see, it has a very unique shape. You want to align it properly. And once it's aligned, go ahead and push it in and secure it, as shown there. And continue this all the way around the entire panel until you have 100% of the lock pins back in and secured. And that panel is secured in place. And there it is, the panel is secured. In our case, we have 11 lock clips that secure that panel inside the storage compartment, as shown here. And we've got an emergency paddle in the event that we're out on the water and our engine dies. We've got an anchor and a whistle. A little dirty, I have to clean that up. If all looks good, go ahead and carefully close your storage compartment. And it is time to re-secure the lower panel on the handlebar unit. Back to the workbench, there is the electrical wire harness and switch I just removed, and there is the string trim line, and here's that lower panel. And again, for organization purposes, I put the screws in the exact same holes that they came out of. It is now time to re-secure that. Camera's now back sitting on the seat looking forward, and as I shift this lower panel in place, do not harm or break the plastic housings that the screws go into. I'm going to insert it, and I'm going to carefully shift this portion behind the starboard throttle housing. as shown there. And I will carefully position the rear portion, and you've got prongs that stick out on the top panel that will be secured inside the lower portion of the panel. Again, do your best not to break anything. And that side looks pretty good. I'll hop to the other side and secure this. Here I am back starboard side, and if all looks good, everything is aligned, I'm going to resecure all 6 screws. And again, in our case, 7/32 screws. Go ahead and carefully align the screws inside the hole and secure the 2 panels together. Do not over tighten these screws. You are screwing into plastic. There it is, bottom panel is secured to the top panel, and now it's time to come to the back side of this housing, as well as the starboard housing. And if you remember, in the beginning of the project, we actually had to remove this little T15 insert there. That alleviates this housing from being able to slip back and forth. And we will secure that, and the starboard side we actually never removed, we just need to tighten it, and then tighten up the screw, resecure the housing or cap here, and we'll do that now. Camera repositioned, and again, we need to secure this T15 insert on the back side of that housing. And go ahead and shift the housing closer inward to the center. And as always, do not cross thread this as you screw it in and tighten it. Now starboard side. Again, we never actually removed the T15 insert. We just loosened it. Do not over tighten it. From here, tighten up the Phillips screw. Again, push it in and tighten it. Back port side, time to secure our cap. I'll start at the top, align it in the slot, and carefully shift it down and onto the handlebar. From here, let's secure it with that lower Phillips screw. And as always, do not cross thread this. Go slow and do not over tighten it. Taking a step back, and from here, double check everything to ensure you're not leaving any tools where they're not supposed to be. All hardware and electrical connections are accounted for and secured. And from here, go ahead and remove your seats, connect your battery, restore all electrical power to your jet ski, and start your engine. And obviously, we are not going to start our engine inside the house. It is wife approved to bring the jet ski in the house, but she did not give me the green light to ever start it inside the house. So that will be when we pull it out here in the next few weeks for the spring and summer. And DIYers, as always, we really hope this helps. Hey, do us a favor below the video. You will see that thumbs up icon. Click on that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Definitely ring your YouTube bell. That would be very helpful to us. We would really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching. Here is our next project. Check that out. That's probably the original. We are going to remove this and install a brand new pad. That will look nice. Again, DIYers, we really hope this video helped. And let us know if you have any questions. Thanks again.